Okay, so now, Jay, to you. Who are you? What are you gonna talk about at UX Live? And yeah, give us a quick intro.
Who am I?
Yeah.
So I'm Jay Tulloch. I'm head of design at Metro Bank. I've been at Metro Bank for just under 3 years now. I was the first UX designer hired by the company 3 years ago. Since then, we've made kind of leaps and bounds, improved our mobile app. So we moved it from, I think it was like 2.4 star when I started. Now it's kind of one of the kind of highest rated banking apps on App Store and Google Play Store. So we're really kind of proud about that. We've also established online account opening journeys as well. We've kind of created experiences around that, which we're constantly improving. So that's been kind of brilliant too. And we've actually kind of scaled quite quickly in 2019. So kind of moving from quite a kind of small team of designers, so UX and UI designers, and now we're kind of a team of kind of 25 kind of designers and consisting of kind of UX, UI. We also have a research function as well, and we're building out a design ops function too. So really exciting times at the minute. Just a kind of quick snapshot as to kind of how much we've grown, where we've come from. And to be honest with you, my whole talk at UX Live is just all around kind of leadership.
Yeah.
And it's basically my first 600 days running a design function kind of over at Metro Bank. And how it came about was when you go online, you go on Medium and kind of all of these other kind of platforms, YouTube,
Sure.
everybody's always talking about what it takes to be a great leader, how to run great teams, how to be an effective manager, all of this kind of good stuff. And that's great. But nobody tells you about the transition. Kind of nobody tells you what to expect going into a leadership position. And, kind of that's something which, kind of for me, kind of going into such a large role from a kind of senior lead kind of designer, effectively kind of running a design function, but not just for UX, but also for UI design too, and kind of research. It's a massive kind of step up, and kind of no one really tells you kind of what to expect kind of within that transition, and kind of how to navigate that. So effectively, this talk is the talk that I wish I had,
Yeah.
to help others who are thinking about making that transition into kind of management or leadership and within design, or even taking a bigger role kind of in the future. It's just kind of managing your expectations and kind of making sure that
Yeah.
you're well prepared for it.
Can you walk me through a little bit the kind of like your decision process? I mean, were you approached for like taking this role? Were you kind of like actively working towards kind of inhibiting such a role, or was this kind of an organic process? And then also, once you had the job, like now what? Like how did you transition into it, or was it like you're in charge now and you run things?
Yeah, so literally, it was almost there was a slight transition period. I was due to kind of unfortunate circumstances with kind of our prior boss, kind of at the bank. I transitioned kind of into that role in the interim period, and put a plan together, managed to kind of keep the kind of wheels moving.
Yeah.
Kind of within the team, and make sure that we didn't slip any deadlines, make sure we're still delivering effectively, kind of on projects as well, and kind of delivering those experiences that our customers deserve. Kind of off the back of that, I was always on that trajectory. It's throughout my career, kind of it's been mentioned that I had leadership qualities and that kind of stuff, and that kind of just kind of reinforces I guess your kind of confidence. So I was able to, kind of take the reins there.
Yeah.
And kind of eventually, that became a kind of permanent position. So I kind of took hold of the team. And at that point, we were a team of 4. And, as I mentioned kind of prior, we've, kind of made leaps and bounds kind of ever since. And we're in a good place now and continually improving.
And what I mean, so how do I have to kind of envision that in terms of personal challenges? Because you talked about like at this transition phase, and you kind of been thrown into the cold water, right? I mean, you're doing an interim job, and then like, what are the personal challenges if I kind of transition into a leadership role? Where maybe also what were you doing before? Like, did you already have some leadership that you needed to kind of show, or were you like implementing on the implementing side only?
Yeah, so I wasn't kind of directly managing anybody. I was kind of one of the kind of more senior members of the team.
Yeah.
So kind of mentorship, kind of comes kind of part of that package. Also kind of outside of the company, I was always involved in the kind of industry, at meetups, hackathons, that kind of stuff. So I think for me, the hardest kind of transition was more that feeling of kind of imposter syndrome. You've gone from being a designer, kind of creating kind of designs for kind of customers, and now you're kind of managing a team. You're kind of leading on that vision. And these are people that you've already spent a considerable amount of time with, kind of designing together, and now you're trying to transition into a kind of manager role, kind of with them reporting into you effectively. So that is quite a transition that you need to kind of get your head over.
Yeah.
And kind of luckily, kind of I'm surrounded by really kind of good people. Kind of a team are very kind of supportive, and a lot of them, kind of backed me, kind of going into that kind of position as well. And so that made the transition a lot easier.
Yeah.
What I'm going to be kind of speaking about, kind of made mostly kind of at the talk as well. Kind of I'll mention this is that there's lots of things outside of day-to-day design management that you have to now consider. So there's kind of HR responsibilities and issues.
Right.
You have to navigate the whole kind of recruitment kind of side of things. It's not as straightforward as writing a job specification and posting it on LinkedIn. There's other avenues that you need to take first, other conversations that you have to have with other members of the business too. On top of that, there's very difficult conversations that you might have to have as well. As a kind of designer, and with a manager that you're reporting into, I don't think we take that into consideration when it comes to performance reviews, for example. When it comes to if you're not feeling that great, or if you're having a down day and you speak to your manager about it, we don't think about what it's like to be on the other side of that table and being your manager in that position, having to kind of hear this, or having to provide some bad feedback, or some constructive criticism, or even kind of good feedback. We don't know what that feels like. And you don't really take that into consideration when you're kind of taking the role. You just think about the design aspect of it. Okay, I'm going to make a grand, fantastic product that users are going to love with this fantastic team. But this is all this other stuff that comes alongside it that we don't consider.
Well, it's humans, right? It's
Yeah.
humans. And I mean, so how do you educate yourself in terms of, you just talked about basically like active listening, right? Developing empathy and stuff like that. What, like, do you do this on the job? Do you have a coach? Do you like, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so kind of literally at Metro Bank, we're very fortunate that they provided the best training I think I've ever seen kind of at a company. They have training platforms for, especially for leadership tracks. So I was on the kind of expedited kind of leadership program, which is kind of like a kind of 8-month, 6-month course, and you basically kind of go through about kind of 12 training courses and practical as well. And that covers everything. That covers kind of hard conversations. It covers your tone of voice through emails. It covers assertiveness. It covers persuasive writing and communication. Also, kind of day-to-day management and one-to-ones, and how to deliver an effective one-to-one and make sure you're getting the best out of your team and nurturing them and giving them what they need and finding out what they need, and by listening. So it kind of really kind of tunes you into your senses, and kind of makes you kind of a lot more kind of self-aware about what you're doing when you're kind of communicating with people. So that program in itself was exceptional. On top of that, I have various mentors. So I've been fortunate enough to be in very close contact with a lot of my former bosses as well. And and I meet up with them kind of quite regularly. For instance, I'm meeting up with one of my bosses. Haven't worked with him for about 5 years. Meeting up with him tomorrow, for example.
Cool.
So I'm still, got those kind of close bonds, and if there's anything that I need to, kind of run by them through their experience, and they're more than happy to kind of help. And it's good to have that support network around you, especially when you're kind of transitioning. And that's something which I definitely recommend anybody who is transitioning over, to make sure that you do have kind of some sort of kind of mentor to help and guide you, even if you're experienced as well. It's always good to have someone to bounce ideas off.
How do you? So if you're saying, because I think it's an important point, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff you were mentioning before, like you go on Medium and you like it's this kind of generalized advice oftentimes, and kind of having someone where you can run through a problem, and then giving another perspective is really valuable. How do you structure such? I mean, when do you actually go to someone else and ask for advice? Like, what's kind of your process? Do you first think about it yourself and just when you cannot solve something, or do you actually have regular meetings with people? Is it like point by point, like ad hoc kind of, or is it?
Yeah.
Do you have?
So for me, it's more. I would like to think about the problem or kind of matter at hand, kind of myself, and kind of think of some options kind of before kind of reaching out. If I'm kind of really stuck kind of with something, then I'll just send a WhatsApp message or maybe a voice note, or I'll just call them and I'll just say, like, this is happening. I want to deal with this properly. In your experience, how have you kind of dealt with similar situations? And, I'm talking to, kind of people who, have kind of 20 years, 10 years experience, kind of managing quite large teams as well. So, I do trust them, kind of their judgment, and build that collective view. And, a lot of the time, you'll find that actually your initial kind of instinct was on the right track, but it's really, kind of useful to have somebody kind of affirm that for you as well.
For sure. And so you mentioned before that when you kind of came in, you were like 4 people, you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And now you're 25 or 26. How did you think about growing the team? Like what goes through your mind? How do you also decide who to hire when, and also probably for different products and all this kind of, like, how do you structure that? How do you strategize around that?
It's quite kind of different for us. Kind of at kind of Metro, we've over kind of the last kind of 10 months, we've had to grow quite quickly because we've had kind of huge investment to kind of scale up and innovate. So the thought process was more around, what do we have at the moment? So like kind of where is the talent and where is that skill set leaning towards? Is it more kind of UX, UI? And kind of what gaps do we need to fill? And I think, kind of when it comes to kind of growing a team, you need to kind of establish kind of what your kind of baseline is at the moment, and just kind of be comfortable with where you are, and then start plugging in those gaps. So you need to get an understanding of, kind of where the business is going, how many projects are going to be running, first of all, and how long are they going to be running for? We could be, tomorrow our execs could say, okay, we're going to be launching 20 new products, for example. Does that mean that I need 40 designers, UX and UI on these products? Or do we have enough people to be able to kind of manage at the moment, and will projects be absorbing into existing projects? So I consider all of that kind of stuff, and one thing that we kind of 100% needed, due to the scale of what we were doing. I think I mentioned to you earlier that we're kind of working across 16 different product initiatives at the moment. In order to deliver effectively on that, what we need is governance, and kind of what we need is regular insights being fed back into the teams and shared. So we needed a kind of research ops kind of division kind of within the team. And that's something which we've kind of started to build out, and it's been really, really effective for us in terms of kind of
Awesome.
communicating changes kind of across the teams, and also sharing those insights and establishing, similarities between customer behaviors across different projects as well. Saves a lot of time.
Can you talk a bit more about the kind of research ops function, because it pops up more and more in companies? And I mean, how do they help you? What's different now that you kind of build out this function?
Oh, it's fantastic. So effectively, when I first joined, we had 2 UX designers working across kind of 3 platforms, and we were only probably testing maybe kind of twice, 3 times a quarter.
Yeah.
We're at a point now where we're testing 15 to 20 times a month, and that is all due to having a research kind of ops function, kind of within the bank, which is effectively handling all of the logistics of kind of recruitment, kind of organizing the time slots for when these sessions can happen, designers submit their briefs, and just managing kind of when those usability testing sessions are facilitated, kind of who can attend, and just scheduling all of that stuff in. That's been so useful, because having somebody handle all of that frees up the time for the designers who are on the projects themselves, and they can continue to concentrate on solving those big customer problems until they're ready to, kind of take some time out and facilitate and kind of get that feedback. So it's really, really good and kind of useful. It's made us kind of a lot more kind of effective as a team and efficient, and it's also helped to, I don't really like using the word, but evangelize kind of UX kind of throughout the business, and kind of make people more aware of the benefits of kind of gathering the customer feedback regularly.
Right. I mean, your team can focus on their core competencies, right? Instead of spending so much time on recruiting and admin stuff. So, but and if for the people who are listening, when do you start to think about the research ops function? Like in the ideal case, right? I mean, when what's kind of the threshold, or is it from the beginning best? Like, how many people do you need in order to have like a research ops person justified in a team?
I think that's quite a hard one, because I'd start building out that function from the beginning.
Yeah.
Just for the mere fact that these people are very kind of proficient and specialized in kind of coordinating all of this stuff. Like, they don't just handle the logistics, but they also handle the contracts with kind of third-party suppliers, or kind of tooling and kind of software, kind of recruitment software, all of that kind of stuff. Like, they handle all of that stuff as well, and that frees up kind of my time, because I'm not always in kind of meetings or calls and having to kind of negotiate all of this kind of stuff. But it also frees up designers' time, so that they can kind of focus on those kind of large problems. So I think the sooner you have people on board that are competent in that area, then the better, because what's going to end up happening is you're going to be able to test a lot more regularly. Right. Your designers will have that hunger to test more. Right. It's not so much of a burden on their everyday design work. Effectively, it's not something which is kind of getting in the way of the project delivery either. So what that means is that they might have to take out a few days to facilitate the session, but they don't have to take out the days or the hours before organize it. And that's valuable time which is inputted into kind of creating the best solution possible for customers, and that's the end goal, really.
Right. So it could also even be that you hire someone part-time in the beginning, if you don't do that much research. But it also has a ripple effect, right? I mean, once you're starting doing more research, you also get taken more seriously, where you, as before, like, what are you spending your time on, and then you see that a lot of it is like exactly like logistics, contract, these NDAs, all this kind of stuff, for sure.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then so we were talking a bit before we went live about the challenges that you are currently facing, which I think is interesting. Not only, I mean, you mentioned kind of communication and growing the team as 2 challenges. Can you talk a bit about those, and also how you're trying to alleviate them?
Yeah. So we're a blended team at the moment. So kind of we're a team of kind of permanent kind of in-house designers, and also kind of contractors as well.
Mm-hmm.
And and that's due to kind of the amount of scale that we've had to go through in order to kind of deliver on these project initiatives. That brings with it challenges in terms of design consistency, making sure we have
Mm-hmm.
consistent experiences kind of across all of our platforms and initiatives that we're trying to deliver into next year.
Mm-hmm.
That means that we have to have a consistent filing structure, kind of make sure that everybody knows where everything is, where it's supposed to be. If somebody rolls off a project and somebody new comes in, where did they pick up all of that stuff? Where did they get all of that kind of user research from? So it's just about establishing, kind of our ways of working, and what works well for us. I'm not sure. Well, anyone who's kind of familiar, I suppose, in kind of working kind of with kind of software developers, kind of within a agile or kind of Scrum kind of methodology, kind of people, they tend to have a technical design authority, for example, where they'll review kind of all of the code kind of before committing. Everywhere I've worked, it's always been that way. There's always been a TDA, might even be a BDA, so like a business design authority. But I've never seen a design authority, a design authority. So kind of we created one. So we created a UXDA, UX design authority. And what that has allowed kind of me to do is, have oversight over kind of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And identify early any inconsistencies in our patterns, any inconsistencies in the experience, or in our kind of UI components, before we actually commit them to build. We have teams that are working near shore, so not all of our teams are based in the UK. We have teams in London. We have teams, in kind of Scotland, working remotely from Scotland, Ireland. So things can very easily kind of go off on a kind of tangent or diverge from the consistent design that we're kind of driving for. So the UXDA has been really, I guess, fundamental to us kind of keeping that consistency going. Now, I'm not, saying that it catches everything, but it catches enough that as a kind of customer, if you move from one platform to another, or if you start off an application for an overdraft and you go into your mobile app and you continue that application, for example, that you can't tell that there's an inconsistency, because we've managed to kind of capture that all of that stuff and kind of keep track of it. Anything that is identified gets added to a backlog. So this is something which we're continuing to kind of mature and kind of refine. And we have people at a lead level on the projects to help to kind of govern on a project level too.
And in terms of communication, like how especially if you have also people working remotely or in other offices, or how that works, what kind of tools are you using? What are you communicating on? What kind of meetings do you have? Do you have like all hands with everybody, or how do you kind of structure that?
Yeah, so in the early days, we'd have kind of regular design team meetings, where we would, kind of all get together and think about a problem, have kind of design critiques as well, kind of collectively. It's very hard to do that with 25 kind of designers. It's very difficult to get everybody in a room. Some people are off testing. Some people, have project deadlines as well, all that kind of stuff. One thing we do kind of commit to is we have a regular kind of weekly stand-up, where everybody kind of goes through what their priorities are for that week, and we start to kind of share kind of any, I guess, kind of knowledge that we may have that might help individuals kind of within the team at that moment in time. We also have kind of other sessions through the week, which is more kind of discipline orientated. So we'll have a kind of UX kind of workshop, which really focuses on the patterns that we're using and how certain components and elements will behave or should behave. Once we are happy with that, then that goes into a kind of UI workshop, and we have that visual communication layer on top of that. And then we'll have a holistic team workshop where we refine it all together, bring it all together, and then we commit it to our design library or kind of design system. And that forms kind of part of kind of how something should work. So anyone new that joins a project, they know exactly what button to use, and it will work exactly how it should do. So those are our key meetings that we kind of tend to have. We also have kind of some kind of design team meetings where I might kind of give an update on kind of where we are with kind of recruitment or kind of tooling as well, where we are with testing. So we do still meet quite regularly, but it's more, I suppose it's less blue sky kind of thinking and kind of having that 20% for innovation, but it's more, kind of how do we push the team forward? How do we make sure that we're still kind of raising the bar for design within the bank? In terms of, kind of file sharing and, kind of that kind of stuff. I work for a bank that has kind of legacy kind of tools and kind of like software, a bank that has, kind of fraud, compliance, procurement departments. It's very difficult to, kind of get the communication channels that we would like. So, for instance, I know that a lot of kind of challenger banks are kind of using Dropbox, for example. Very difficult to get Dropbox signed off kind of over at a bank. But we do use, things like Slack as well. Kind of Slack's fine. Apparently.
So you got one win. You got one win in.
We've got one win, and I'm going to allude to this on my talk kind of next week as well. That you will take some losses, but there will be some wins as well. And you do have to take the wins as they come. And Slack was a major win for us. It keeps us all kind of in the loop with what we're doing. We also are kind of big fans at the moment of kind of Atlassian, so kind of Confluence and Jira. And that's where kind of we store a lot of our findings. That's where we store the outcomes of our UX DA sessions as well. So the UX Design Authority, we use Confluence to track progress on kind of design tickets in Jira. And that all gets pulled through to the Design Authority page. And we basically discuss those stories and kind of where we are with those stories and how they're forming, any challenges that are coming up, any inconsistencies we can kind of outline and kind of point them out. And it's a really good way to kind of govern the overall kind of design output across the team and just kind of ensure that we're doing the right thing at all times.
Now, in all of this, like if we take a step back, like what do you see your role is as a leader? Where do you see yourself in the whole organization, or let's say in the kind of UX department? Like what's your job? When have you done your job right?
My job is effectively I allude to this kind of in the talk as well. So it's about a mindset shift. So you shift from a place of responsibility where you're kind of responsible for the solution of the product to a role of accountability. So I'm accountable for the effectiveness of that product. When it's launched to market, do customers love it? Is it consistent with our brand and kind of what we believe our values are? And when you shift your mindset to accountability, the role of a head of design is to effectively make sure that the wheels keep moving. People are happy within the teams that they are and the work that they're doing, and making sure that they actually have everything that they need in order to be effective in their roles. That takes priority over everything. And just making sure that you're providing valuable insight to your team, and you're also kind of spreading the good words and providing that design challenge kind of at a exec level as well, and kind of having those conversations and kind of making sure that the design team are heard, our concerns are heard, our progress is heard, the challenges that we're facing are heard, all of that kind of stuff. I have to be that voice that's all channeled through. And that is a massive kind of shift because you're not necessarily at whiteboards kind of sketching or kind of within your notepad anymore. And that's kind of something to be mindful of kind of going into it. But predominantly that is my role. It's just to kind of make sure that we have everything that we need to kind of do a job really, and kind of deliver excellent experiences to customers.
Do you miss the kind of design aspect of your job, or do you still get like a few hours in every week where you can sit down and kind of do some design work yourself? Do you have some side projects, or do you miss it?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think I went through kind of a few months, probably about 6 months, without even touching Sketch
Right.
or InVision.
Hmm.
Uploading anything to InVision, and that is quite a difficult shift.
Yeah.
Especially kind of being a creative. And what I found with the kind of UX DA sessions is that it allows me to kind of think creatively again.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
it's almost like I guess, a UX kind of critique or kind of UI critique session. So
Hmm.
it allows me to kind of look at the problem and start to, I guess, apply my kind of spin to it based on the context that I have across the business. So it's a new way of designing, kind of which I'm getting used to. Obviously, kind of being a designer, everyone's got kind of side projects
Yeah.
that they might do, kind of side of desk or kind of at home as well. So that kind of keeps me, kind of up to date with kind of I've had the latest trends, techniques, kind of what to, the latest updates on Sketch, all that kind of stuff. Um, so I get to refine my skills, but just not on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Which is I do miss it. I'm not going to lie to you. But there's a whole new challenge in front of me, which is as
Right.
equally as exciting.
Hmm.
Effectively, I'm not designing kind of solutions for products. I'm actually designing a department,
Hmm.
and that's really exciting to be a part of. So.
Can you talk a bit about like kind of like I like to ask about like favorite failures of
Ooh,
yours where it was hard when you were in it, but then kind of reflecting and looking back, you like learned a lot. Can you do like one or two come to mind? Like maybe your favorite failure if you want.
favorite failure.
Can be in design or leadership.
Hmm, that's quite a tricky one.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think I don't think I've kind of failed in a sense where it's been kind of a massive kind of screw up or anything like that.
Hmm.
I've definitely kind of learned kind of along the way, especially kind of within leadership. It's around,
Yeah.
kind of delivery of your message.
Hmm.
And, I learned something huge kind of along my journey, kind of earlier kind of this year. It's all around, congruence and kind of
Hmm.
making sure that your body language and your tone of voice reflects the message that you're delivering,
Hmm.
especially when it's a message of, kind of great importance that's going to
Mm.
impact the kind of morale of the team. And that's something which kind of I've learned that is essential when it comes to kind of verbal communication with people. When
Hmm.
you're in front of people on a one-to-one kind of basis, that they actually understand what you're saying, and the importance of what you're saying, and that you're kind of there for them. You're there to help them along their journey too. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a failure, but I definitely recognize that in the beginning,
Yeah.
I might not have been the best at that, and that's something
Hmm.
which I've grown more kind of comfortable with and
Hmm.
delivering my message more effectively, in terms of kind of people understanding it and kind of helping them along their journey.
How do you give feedback? Because I assume a lot of your job is actually giving feedback. What did you learn about giving good feedback?
So kind of giving good feedback, I think you need to be able to give feedback on the fly.
Hmm.
So as soon as you kind of spot something which is good or could be improved, then call it out,
Hmm.
and not necessarily. It doesn't have to kind of be public. It can be literally, like to the side and say, oh, and I noticed this.
Yeah.
I really like the way you handled that,
Hmm.
and that just kind of keeps that kind of constant kind of communication between kind of yourself and your team. But also, informalizes it and kind of makes it feel more like a kind of natural kind of conversation, and kind of people tend to kind of take it in a lot better that way. Um, Especially because it's within the context of something that's just happened or something that's just been achieved.
Hmm.
So that's something that I've learned is, don't wait until performance reviews to provide feedback, for example,
Hmm.
on something which happened maybe a month ago or kind of 2 months ago. Give it as soon as you kind of notice it.
Hmm.
And that's the most effective way to do it.
And staying kind of with that topic of giving feedback, like if it's like something let's say somebody screwed up, like delivering a hard message, like how do you deliver that? Like what kind of goes through your mind? Also, that what you mentioned before, how do you call it? Congruence, you know, like how do you like prepare for something like that?
Yeah, you know, and I've had these, you know, and kind of I'll allude to this in my talk as well. You know, I've had kind of difficult conversations,
Right.
kind of with people, and where, you know, things have had to kind of be addressed. And you know, I think the best way to do it is to understand that person and not categorize them and, you know, stereotype them, put them in a box and make a judgment. You know, I'm not a judge kind of them. I'm here to help and support them and help them through anything that they might be, you know, kind of going through. They might be going through some challenges and that I'm unaware of kind of at that moment in time. They might be facing a blocker that is stressing them out, which is why they're not performing as well as they could be. So kind of my first, you know, I guess kind of port of call is usually to have just an informal chat and, you know, just kind of come up to them and say, you know, I've noticed you're not yourself, or I've noticed this happened the other day. Like, tell me about it. Like, what's going on? Do you want to go for a coffee? Shall we find a room? Do you want to, you know, kind of go for a walk? You know, I've been on walks around the block, you know, with people, just having a kind of natural kind of conversation, and, you know, they'll like reveal exactly kind of what's going on, and then you build up that empathy kind of for that person and understand that actually, do you know what, like, it wasn't anything, you know, malicious. It wasn't something which you know, they did on purpose. You know, they do want to do their best work. They do want to be kind of the best that they can be. They just need a kind of gentle kind of push of support in order to do that. And I think that's kind of very kind of important to not go in on an attack or with a kind of mindset of judgment. You just need to kind of really understand that person and kind of empathize with their situation and see how you can actually improve it for them as well.
On the team level, I mean, do you did you kind of how do you say that, come up with values that you kind of propagate in the team and you're kind of living by, or is that coming top down from the company itself, or do you have your own? How do you think about like values and also value hire, right? I mean, how do you make this kind of culture work, like this design research teams?
Yeah, so we do have values. We have we have values and we have principles. So I'll go through the values because they're shorter. But effectively, you know, kind of our values are kind of efficiency and simplicity, kind of courage, quality, empathy, and trust and honesty. And, you know, these are our core values that we should, you know, kind of hold at the helm of kind of everything that we do. And when we're, you know, kind of producing designs for people. We also have principles which reflect some of these values as well, if not all of them. And one of our major values is around trust and designing for trust. Being a bank, we're handling people's money. We're giving people insights about their money, about their, you know, about financial management, all that kind of stuff. Very sensitive topic, very personal to people. And, you know, how do we communicate messaging around that? How do we, you know, make the experience as smooth as possible so they don't leave frustrated? How do they trust us to deposit their money and kind of keep it safe for them? All of that kind of stuff. Let me talk you through them actually. So be inclusive. You know, especially kind of this year, we've got a massive focus on accessibility and making sure that we're an inclusive bank, and when we're designing, we're including everybody, or at least we're thinking about everybody as we're kind of providing those solutions. Simplicity over complexity, so don't overthink it. Don't you know, don't think about every single edge case and create a complex solution. What's the simplest path first, and then let's build up of that. How can we get people through this journey as smoothly and effectively as possible? Design for context, so understands how the experience that we're building affects other areas of the business as well, and how it might be able to integrate with other areas of the business to provide a better experience, or, you know, where are our customers going to be when they're engaging with this service, when they're applying for a current account online. Are they on the way to work doing it? Are they on their lunch break? Are they on their mobile phone? Think about the context. Don't settle for less is another one as well. We've got a kind of quick line for that, which is design is the tool, but quality is the goal.
Can you say that again?
Design is the tool, but quality is the goal. Evidence over assumptions as well. And that goes back to the whole research side of things. Everything that we should be doing should be informed by data, whether it's qualitative data, quantitative data. We shouldn't really be doing everything off gut feel. Yes, experience comes along the way, and we do get to understand our users and behaviors by practicing design. But what we can't do is just go off a gut feel every single time. We need to gather some evidence in order to support us as well, and also makes design decisions a lot more kind of valid and kind of throughout the company as well. And harmony over chaos. So that is effectively creating a cohesive experience, and this is something which I'm really proud of since I have headed the team over at Metro, is that we came from a place where we had very inconsistent experiences. And now that when we do our monthly showcases around the departments, you can see our design language and patterns starting to emerge and be reflected within the solutions that are being put forward by our team. So we've come a long way, and that's something which I'm kind of proud of, is that we are kind of creating this kind of harmonious kind of ecosystem of design kind of over in the company, which is fantastic.
And are there certain things you're actively doing to constantly instill, especially also to new people, right? I mean, since you're hiring quite a bit, how do you make sure the people are understanding the values and are kind of looking through the lens of the values when they're designing or thinking about kind of products?
Yeah. So this is something which we're talking through at the moment, kind of with the team, and we're kind of making sure that we are communicating our values in the most effective way possible. So we've currently gone through an exercise where we've re-thought through our values and said, are these the values that really reflects our design team and what we want to achieve as a team? When it comes to kind of reflecting it to, I guess, the wider company, it's through kind of our showcases and kind of reaffirming what those values are and how they're represented within the solutions. But also we need to have them kind of upfront whilst we're designing the solution. So we're looking at the moment having cards, leaflets that have our values and principles printed on them, that each team will actually have kind of on their desks, so that they can kind of refer to them as they're kind of going through a solution for a problem, and just making sure that almost like almost like a checklist in a way. Harmony over chaos, is that reflected? Accessibility, is that reflected? So they can literally just kind of go through it one by one and make sure that they've actually kind of put everything into that.
One thing that I saw once in an application process that I actually really liked was there was kind of a questionnaire that was that you had to fill out during the application, where it was like, please read our values and then mention the one that you think is going to be the hardest for you to implement, like you personally. And what it kind of did was it makes you reflect about like your values and the company's values, and already in the application process, people are starting to think like that. So because I think it's so, especially if you're hiring so fast, it's to kind of keep that all together is probably a challenge, right?
No, 100%. Yeah. It's definitely kind of we're going through a recruitment at the moment, and it's definitely at the forefront of kind of whoever we bring in, are they kind of meeting those values, which are kind of core to us as a team, and that's very important for kind of whoever we bring in as well. So yeah, 100%.
So before I go into the one or two last questions from me, you can ask your questions. I actually forgot to mention that, but I saw Tamara mention it in the chat. So there is a Q&A tab in the chat window where you can ask your questions, and we'll get to them in a second. before we kind of wrap up our part of the conversation, do you, like you mentioned the principles before, and you say they take a bit longer, but can you make an example of what a design principle is, and how you develop one? Because I think it's quite powerful. Principles are also quite powerful because you don't need to constantly make the same decisions over and over, because, right? I mean, you have kind of established the principle of like how you work. So can you talk a bit about it?
Yeah. So effectively, a principle is what you hold yourself accountable for. It's all about, these are what is important to us as a team when we deliver a solution to a customer. And when a customer logs onto one of our platforms and they're greeted with an experience, how do you want them to feel going through it? And we ran a workshop kind of over the summer to kind of establish and kind of realign our principles. And that just involved, kind of the whole kind of design team. And
Awesome.
we basically, outlined exactly kind of what it was that was important to us at an individual level when it comes to design and kind of experiences. And we put them all together, and we actually found that there were a lot of similarities in terms of our core values, which is a great first step. If there's lots of disparity, then you've got a lot more work to do, right? But what we found is that there's kind of a lot of similarity. So we found the groupings very easy. The next steps are effectively embedding those principles. Like I said, you have to hold yourself accountable to them. But that, in order to do that, they need to be at the forefront of your mind all the time. And it's just about, how do we then do that? Do we have, kind of screensavers with the principles on them? Do we have those checklists that I mentioned before? But yeah, that's definitely first things first. Get everybody in a room, think about your personal values, and collectively try and map them all together and kind of see what you come out with.
I think it's a super important point. We went through something similar here at Testing Time over the past month, and we really realized how valuable the collaborative aspect is of actually getting to the values. Because what often happens is like, right, kind of slap the values on, where you kind of say, those are our values, but it's very difficult for the team to then identify with them if it's not this collaborative experience, right? Whether that's principles or values. Yeah. Okay, so maybe just a quick question before we head to the Q&A ones. Do you have any kind of resources, books that you can recommend? I don't know, websites that helped you along the way. Does anything come to mind? And we'll just put like the links to them in the chat. So do you have any books like you give to a team or?
So books. I think the best book that I've read this year is Judy Zhu from Facebook. She's a VP of design at Facebook, and she's got a book called Making of a Manager, which is absolutely kind of fantastic. A lot of the kind of situations, especially around kind of having conversations with your team and all that kind of stuff, she addresses that and articulates it really, really well, kind of within the book in quite a friendly and conversational type way, and also kind of anecdotally as well. So that is really, really cool. So I highly recommend that. I think anyone transitioning to management needs to understand the art of negotiation. So there's a book called Never Split the Difference. I can't remember the author, but it's a big yellow book. Fantastic. You're going to need that, especially when it comes to,
it's like a Bible.
Especially when it comes to kind of tooling and kind of all of that stuff. Like, as soon as you kind of assume a kind of leadership position where you're responsible for a department and there are budgets involved and all that kind of stuff, you need to be kind of very kind of acute and kind of make sure you're getting the best deal possible, kind of for your team as well. So 2 of those books, amazing. And also there's a book which isn't necessarily a design book. It is, I suppose you could call it a business book, but it's called Jab, 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 Right Hook.
From
by
Gary
Vaynerchuk. It's an oldie but a goodie, just because it's all about giving value first and demonstrating that value. before going in for the ask. So a lot of
Yeah.
people kind of I've spoken to that have kind of assumed leadership roles within design, they'll be like, oh, they don't believe in research, or they won't give us budget, or they won't allow us to hire. But what have you given to them? What have you given to the business that articulates that research is needed or of high value, or that it's kind of fundamental to the success of the business? If you haven't given anything, you've gone straight in, then you're going to get a no most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's all about kind of creating that value proposition around kind of research, around design, and as a whole, and before you go in for the ask. So jab, 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 right hook, really, really good. So they're my 3 off the top of my head. If there's any more, then I'll share them as well.
Yeah, I mean, so we usually put the resources also on our blog, and we'll send that link out as well, where we also summarize the books you just mentioned. They're also in the chat. Okay, so let's go to the Q&A. We have Xavi asking, did you have to convince people within the company of UX? Did you have opposition? And how did you deal with that opposition?
So I have done in the past, had opposition. At Metro, kind of my leadership teams have been very supportive. If I've been kind of quite honest with you, the whole ethos of Metro Bank is around exceptional customer interaction and experience within our branches, which we call stores, and so they already understand kind of customer centered approaches. So it wasn't kind of really that tough. I think in the past, though, in order to kind of get buy-in, it's exactly what I said previously with jab, 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 right hook. Showcase that value. Invite people to the sessions, key people that make those decisions into those sessions, and kind of make sure that they witness some of the hardships that customers go through when using your products. That is, fundamental to kind of getting buy-in. They need to believe it, they need to see it in order to invest in it ultimately. And you can't do any better than having somebody in the room failing at something which the execs think it should be easy and natural to everybody. When they see someone fail in front of them, they're more committed to actually investing in kind of research.
How much of like showing what you show is also backed up by metrics? How much, like if you say like you need to show what you're doing, how much can you measure, and do you measure?
Yeah, so we're getting a lot better at measuring. Kind of we use kind of various online tools in order to kind of measure how many people are kind of getting through the journeys and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, kind of dealing with kind of legacy systems and that digital at the bank, is about 10 years old. Design is 3 years old. So we're still kind of establishing, still kind of tagging kind of components and event tracking and all that kind of stuff. So we're starting to mature it more and more. The key for us in terms of kind of metrics usually comes down to our usability kind of testing sessions, our surveys as well. Kind of how many people are dropping off through the analytical data that we do have access to, and just kind of providing that and kind of presenting it, kind of to kind of key decision makers kind of around the business as well. Kind of one thing that I found key kind of for myself, which I haven't mentioned, is I'm doing a master's at the moment as well. So that master's is non-design related. It's all around business. So it's around financial management, accounting, it's around proposition development, product development, all of that kind of stuff. And that's opened up my understanding to the language of how businesses, I guess, communicate and kind of how businesses think and operate a lot better. So now I can position design in a way that is understandable, not just to the design team, because we get it, but also to executive stakeholders that might not understand some of our terminology. It's almost kind of turning design outputs into numbers that people understand, and so that has been really, really effective. So I do recommend kind of understanding kind of how propositions work. Financial management and forecasting are very, very key models in order to kind of turn or change the perspective of kind of quite kind of stubborn kind of leadership kind of partners as well.
But I think you're making a very important point that actually came up also in the past conversations on this series, where almost everyone is like, okay, I actually had to learn about business because I need to speak the language of the people that I'm talking to. Don't use the jargon and all this kind of stuff because it will just confuse people. Yeah, I think that's a very important point. Okay, so we have how many researchers are working in your team in relation to 25 designers, and how many would you recommend, I guess, as a ratio kind of thing?
Yeah, so at the moment, in terms of researchers, 0. But we have research ops, kind of the people that are handling the logistics, etc., that I've mentioned before. The people actually doing the research are the UX practitioners. So they are skilled at kind of facilitating those sessions. We are moving in the direction of having designated researchers, and we are at the moment moving people into that position as well. So I think we should be having our first kind of researcher within the team pretty soon as well, and they'll kind of feed that constant kind of loop of communication between us and the customer as well, and hopefully kind of alleviate some of the time from our designers on projects too.
Jakub asks, do you have a recommendation for a one-man UX team plus a product manager in a startup? What to focus on? What would be the most important things at this stage to deliver good UX? I guess it's like kind of like rewinding, and when you don't have all the resources, what do you do when it's a UX team of one? Yeah,
cool. I've been that guy. I was that guy.
There you go.
Like back in kind of, I think it was like 2011, 2012. I was that guy, and we had kind of big kind of government contracts, and I had to, not only was I kind of doing the design and kind of the research and all that kind of stuff, I was presenting back to clients. I had to do the front end development of it as well. So I fully understand kind of where you're coming from here. You just need to start working a lot smarter with your time. You only have so much time within the day, and that's where prototyping really comes into effect. I've built up quite a good kind of reputation in terms of kind of quality of kind of prototypes, and that's just because I felt that prototyping was the most effective and efficient way to get a message across to potential clients or current clients, and let them actually understand what it is that you're doing. You can go straight into high fidelity because you have the luxury of being that designer of one or team of one. It's just you that has access, kind of all of the components and all that kind of stuff. So you already understand the behaviors and all of that. So you can literally use those building blocks to go straight into high fidelity, prototype a realistic scenario or a few scenarios and put that in front of clients and test with people, or put that in front of users and test with people. That is very effective, saves so much time as well. So I think in terms of like what you should focus on, if you are within a team that has a single product, so for instance, a fintech, for example, build out those initial building blocks, and that will allow you to iterate things a lot faster, prototype a lot faster as well. If you've got many clients, then just build out a set of assets, general assets that you can use, that you can drag and drop into Sketch, and exactly the same thing. Allow yourself to prototype a lot quicker. Get familiar with Framer X if you haven't done so already, or a tool like Axure as well. So kind of when I was early on in my design career, Axure was the tool that everyone used, and became very proficient at that. And once you become proficient using these tools, your work rate will increase considerably, and you'll be able to churn these things out like anything really. You'll just be like water off a duck's back to you, and you'll end up with a lot more time to focus on the interviews and the research itself.
Awesome. I think that's great advice. Last question from Mike, actually. Hey, Mike. The most challenging scenario you faced in leading your design team so far? We talked, I guess it's like not a failure, but like a challenge. What is like in leading overall over the past like couple of years or months?
I think it's keeping everybody happy.
Yeah.
I think, as a leader, that is very difficult. You've got not everybody has the same character. Not everybody, has the same goals and ambitions for their career and their personal life as well. And working in a company which is growing so fast, the environment changes kind of very quickly as well. There's lots of new people joining the team in a short space of time, and it's just making sure that people are kind of happy enough in their roles and that they want to continue doing kind of great work and working to the best of their ability. They want to collaborate and get more involved. They don't become distant from kind of other kind of members of the team. And also that, my focus isn't shifting too much on others who are joining the team. That I am kind of giving enough time to every individual kind of that works within design, and kind of making sure that they get the kind of dedicated time that they need. That is the biggest challenge when leading the team for me. I think everything else you can kind of negotiate and navigate around through establishing good quality kind of processes and ways of working and file structures and that kind of stuff. But that one-to-one kind of relationship, maintaining that as the company grows, as the team grows, is the biggest challenge and something which I'm continually working on too.
And it also seems like, I mean, you mentioned it a bit before. I mean, it also seems like one of your main priorities, right?
Yeah.
Like to actually, like a successful week is a week where you have happy employees with intrinsic motivation to do their best work.
100%.
Yeah.
That is so important, and I know, it's not the easiest thing. It's not the easiest thing to do. Like I said, when you have a small team, and my first year and a bit, we had a very small team, so that came quite naturally. That was quite easy to build those reports. When you scale up so quickly to kind of a team of 25, your attention has to be divided 25 times, and that comes with its own kind of challenges, and you do become disconnected. And how do you remain connected, and how do you still kind of build that rapport kind of with kind of individuals within the team, and make sure that they're getting what they need from their careers as well.
Beautiful. Okay, I think we're already 6 minutes over, but that's okay. So before we end this, where can people reach you? Can people write you? Shoot you an email? Can people find you on Twitter? Where should people contact you if they have questions or just want to kind of connect with you?
So two main channels that I use are Instagram. So you can find me at Jay.Tulloch on Instagram. Very important. Make sure you follow that. I want huge numbers. And also LinkedIn. So very active on LinkedIn as well. So you can feel free to kind of shoot me a message there as well. Both of those platforms over the next kind of few months, I'm creating content. So as you mentioned, how am I staying in the loop with design and like, making sure that I'm doing stuff? I want to start producing more content to help people kind of off the back of my talk as well next week. So stay tuned for kind of more stuff in that area.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, speaking about the talk, I promised you the discount code. I think Tamara will put it into the chat window where you can get your tickets. You have 5 days left, so get yours. And just maybe to quickly reiterate, so your talk will be about your first kind of 600 days as a design leader, right? Okay, cool. And that's going to be on Wednesday.
I think it's at 10:40 in the morning.
Right.
So it's literally the first talk on a Wednesday. So
awesome.
No pressure.
So make sure to check Jay out on the channel we just put in. Definitely his Instagram. Definitely check out his Instagram. Do you have anything else that kind of a message that you want to give to the audience in terms of or kind of like a request you would make or something like that to end? What's your message?
My message is kind of we're all on a journey, kind of through leadership, You know, kind of hopefully next week through my talk, you'll kind of understand, you know, kind of what it takes, what you need to be aware of when transitioning into kind of a leadership position, especially a big role as well, and kind of what comes with it. But what I want people to, I guess, kind of take away is make sure that you stay true to yourself and your core values too, because that's what makes you a unique designer, and that's what kind of brings the best out of people. So kind of self-awareness is key.
Beautiful. I think that's a magnificent way to end this conversation. Jay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it, and I hope the audience listening in did so too. Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to your presentation next Wednesday at UX Live.
Me too. Thanks to everybody. Thanks.
Make sure to check it out. Cheers, everyone. Thank you very much. Bye, Jay.
Bye.